Boy, the football gods really helped us when the Jaguars had to pivot and take a wide receiver in round one. We'll talk about that and more here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is absolutely your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. And we thank you for making us your first listen, reminding you that we are always free on our YouTube page, that is Locked On Jaguars. And then make sure that if you listen to podcasts, wherever you hear them, make sure that you tap in every single day so you do not miss an episode of the show, which is today brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. And we thank the everydayers for joining us here on Locked On Jaguars and making us their first listen. Now, we're going to talk about how it's not just about one game. Everyone sat there and hit me up and said all the bulky draft picks showed up today. That's fine. And that's good. And that's nice. But it's one day, one game. That's not what this is about. We'll talk more about that as we get to the end of the show. Right in the middle, talk about what a superstar Brian Thomas Jr. has a chance to be. Not is already, but has a chance to be. First segment right now, well, we're going to get to the top of it. We're not going to bury the lead. Calvin who? And I'm talking about Calvin Ridley. And this will tie in to the grand scheme. This isn't all about Calvin Ridley. I'm not going to beat somebody because they left here. But Calvin Ridley was a huge target to retain for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They wanted to retain him. It was all about retention. They offered Calvin Ridley a very competitive salary. Huge. I guarantee you it was somewhere around $22-23 million. I think he took 23, $92 million over 4 years to go to the Titans. I'm sure they came in at least at 20 or 21 or something like that. And aren't we glad he didn't take that money? Because if you recall on draft night, you guys may remember this. After the draft pick was made, after the Jaguars moved back and the draft pick of Brian Thomas Jr. was made, we were talking to Trent Baalke in a little Q&A, Trent Baalke as well as Coach Doug Peterson. And prior to that, in the lead up to the draft, I was very high on Brian Thomas Jr., extremely high on him. And my other choice was Quinyon Mitchell. And he's also playing well. He's a good-looking rookie, also up in Philadelphia. So shout out to me because I wouldn't have missed. But in any event, we asked Trent Baalke. I think I asked him the question: had they had already admitted that they actively did try to re-sign Calvin Ridley. And the question to Trent Baalke was, well, if you had gotten Ridley, would Brian Thomas Jr. have been your pick? He said probably not. And I also asked him about the trade back because the Jaguars actually picked Brian Thomas Jr. a few picks away from their original pick. They moved back. And I said, was he the pick there? He said he was the pick there too. So they took a chance because rumors came out circulating, and the Miami Dolphins fans are up in an uproar right now because they're saying that rumor has it that the Dolphins damn near had a coin toss, a coin flip, whether they took Brian Thomas Jr. or Chop Robinson. So this puts the whole draft process and the whole free agency process in really a big capsule for everyone to understand how it goes. Every team has to pivot. Every team has a group of guys. And for the Jaguars, I think it was Brian Thomas Jr. and then it was Terrion Arnold. It sounds like that's who they were going to probably snatch up. Every team has a group of guys where they're like, okay, here are 4 or 5 guys. If we could get one of them within the next 2 or 3 picks, we'll be fine with them. And I always say I understand that because you can't marry yourself or fall in love with one player because maybe somebody else likes that guy too, and then they move up and take him right in front of you. And then what are you going to do? time I saw a hissy fit thrown in a draft room was years ago when Bill Belichick was in Cleveland and they wanted to draft Kyle Brady, and somebody moved up and got Brady ahead of him, Kyle Brady ahead of him, not Tom Brady, Kyle Brady. And Belichick lost it. I believe he was coaching Cleveland at the time. He may have been coaching New England, but I know he lost it. And you saw him visibly upset. And, you know, you always wonder if teams are putting themselves in a position. That's why I never try to use the term or the phrase, you can find a guy. You can find a guy. But in this case, had Calvin Ridley taken the money that the Jaguars offered him, one thing would be definitive. The Jaguars would have a lesser player than they have at wide receiver right now, and they will be paying a whole bunch more money. And Ridley's also 30, and Brian Thomas Jr. is like 21, 22. So I'm looking at Brian Thomas Jr., like barring injury or anything unforeseen, that he's going to be a 10-year player here for the Jacksonville Jaguars and be an absolute star for this organization. And he is, you can highlight him as the thing that I always talk about is when you hit on a player like that in the first round and you want to make him a forever player in your organization. Everything about him, the way he works, his demeanor, how he carries himself, his professionalism, his learning curve. He looked good in training camp. He is way better than that already. So his upside is just off the meat rack. And I tried to tell people that this was something that compared to when everyone just thought Justin Jefferson was just a guy because he played next to Jamar Chase. Same thing, Malik Neighbors, who reminds me of Jamar Chase, and this kid reminds me of Justin Jefferson. So there's no difference in those situations because it caught us by surprise. But we never would have gotten here if Calvin Ridley had taken that money. So kudos to backup plans, right? Good thing GMs have backup plans. And it makes you look a little bit tighter at the entire process. And that is just because you have guys bunched in a group based on what you think their skill set is, they are not going to all be alike. So due diligence has to be done. Some other things have to fall in place, like guys saying no to contracts. I'm wondering if the Jaguars have some guys that they signed in free agency that they either wish they would have kept the other guy. Now, I'm not trying to start any trouble, but Rashawn Jenkins is playing well, and Darnell Savage he's been hurt for the most time he's been here. He's only been on the field for 2 games. And I don't see a tremendous difference in the team's performance when he's on the field. So maybe that's somewhere where the Jaguars are going, damn, I wish he would have said no too. Maybe I would have drafted somebody else. But I'm not saying that Savage is a bust, but it's like just because you do something doesn't mean you don't have a way to explain why you did it. But you could actually make a wrong turn, and it could be a very slight turn that makes your team a little bit worse. In this case, the Jaguars didn't actually make the turn. The turn was made for them. And now you look back and say, whoo, I dodged a bullet. I dodged a bullet in high school. There was a girl I wanted to marry so bad before I went in the military. And man, I dodged a bullet because let me tell you something. One, my wife now that I have now is a winner. And two, well, that would have left a lot to be desired, and I probably wouldn't be the man that I am today. So kudos to being able to pivot and make things right. Shout out to Calvin Ridley. I hope he's doing all right up there in Tennessee. But even with the news of Robert Saleh getting fired, I think about the Green Bay Packers, right? I think about the Green Bay Packers, and this is the example. They probably wanted to keep Aaron Rodgers and wanted to keep Devontae Adams. And I'm not saying that they're better without them. But what they are is better than the 2 teams that those 2 guys went to and got paid. You got to be careful when you go out here and pay players that come from other teams way more money. And then especially if you're making trades for those guys, and then those teams take all of those resources, and they end up you probably should have done, which is build through the draft and get a lot younger. So the Jaguars traded for Calvin Ridley, had him under contract for a year, and then he left. and fans were angry that he left. And I guarantee you, if you poll every Jaguar fan, ain't nobody mad that they got Brian Thomas Jr. instead of Calvin Ridley, and they're paying him a whole bunch less money, which means it opens up so money can be used in other places. We'll talk more about that, and I'm going to get into Brian Thomas Jr. I'm going to get into what I think makes him great, compare him to some other players, but more importantly, I'm going to talk about how his presence is going to help Trevor Lawrence, not just right now, but in the future. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. That's right. The words to describe FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. That's 4 words, and it's true. They are. That's what makes them great, and what makes them great actually makes them America's #1 sportsbook. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. First of all, when you go to make your wagers, normally you have to go from one screen to another to check on all of the stats and the play-by-play. You don't have to do that anymore. All of it's on the same page, same place you make your wagers. You can check the stats, whether you're doing fantasy or you can check play-by-play just in case you need somebody to score a touchdown so you can win you some Skrilla, right? Speaking of money, when you get started with FanDuel, you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, whether you win or lose, when you make your first $5 bet. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, no questions asked, when you make your first $5 bet or place your first $5 bet. Make sure you tap in, man. That is FanDuel, and it is America's #1 sportsbook. Today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by Hillside College. Let me explain something to you. I am always on a quest to learn more than I already know. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. I think that one right now in the season that we're in really, really sticks out. Constitution 101, the meaning and the history of the Constitution. You can learn all of that stuff, man. I'm telling you. Hillside College is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and so many, many more. Right now, go to hillside.edu/locked-on to enroll. That's hillside.edu/locked-on to enroll. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. That's hillside.edu/locked-on to register. Make sure you check it out. It's free, man. Hillside College. Get smarter. All right, we're here on Locked On Jaguars. Starting out, we started out talking about Calvin Ridley, and now we're going to talk about superstar at wide receiver, and that is Brian Thomas Jr., rookie out of LSU. I heard somebody on TV say, how the hell did LSU ever lose a game? You got Jaden Daniels, who's setting the league on fire, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas Jr. Right now, they're at the top of the food chain with the wide receivers, along with Marvin Harrison Jr. How did they lose? They got a Will Campbell, the left tackle, from next year. I'll check with my guys over at Locked On NFL Draft, Damien and Coach. They probably got him somewhere in the top 10. And you're sitting there going, how did they even lose a game, and why they didn't score 50, 60 points? Well, that's a good question, but I'm glad the Jaguars got their share of players from that school, and I'm glad they got one in particular, who is Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr. is a different character, man. You know, I wanted to give him a nickname, but he probably wouldn't like it, but call him Sleepy, because he looks so laid back. He's so quiet, well-spoken. I remember in training camp, before training camp and mini camp, they were like, yeah, he learns fast. It's just that, you know, he ain't got a whole bunch of emotion. You know, he'll just do everything you ask him to do. And then you tell him and he'll go out and do it better, but he just won't say anything. Somebody told me a long time ago in sports, guys like that are guys that are just itching to play. They're just itching to play. Just, hey, man, what's wrong with him? Ain't nothing wrong with him, dog. He just wants to go out there and run past people and score a touchdown. He is itching for this game to get started. And Brian Thomas Jr. looks like the type of dude that when the game gets started, he gets started. When everything matters, he prepares, he does all of that stuff, but he shows way more emotion on game day than he does during practice. And I think it's super, super refreshing. Not to mention the fact that he's 6'3" or right at 6'3", over 200 and some odd pounds. I anticipate him probably over the years getting a little stronger, getting a little bigger, a little bit more muscular definition, start to change his body like a lot of receivers did. Julio did it. He probably won't ever be as big as Julio, or probably won't be as big as Terrell Owens, but he'll get a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. But what he's shown is there are a lot of people that thought that all he was a 9-route guy or a post guy or slant or quick hitch. This dude runs the entire route tree, and he sells those routes. He puts DBs on skates. He gets those hips turned, and once he gets those hip turned, he plants that foot, man, and he cuts and he turns, and those hands are ready to catch the ball. He is very, very polished as a wide receiver. He is a real, real good player, man. He might be, and look, he might be one of the best draft picks the Jaguars have ever made. And I know we only have a 5-game sample size, but I honestly believe that. He might be one of the best draft choices the Jaguars have ever made. And I told you, they wouldn't have made this pick had Calvin Ridley signed that deal. So I wouldn't necessarily say that they lucked into this, because luck is when opportunity meets preparation. Calvin Ridley decided not to stay. The opportunity presented itself. They did their eval. They did their preparation. The only thing I can tell you is they almost screwed this up, and we would have never known it, by the way, because they got behind the Miami Dolphins. And a part of that process in the draft is to sit here and wonder, okay, we can go here and we can still get one of these 2 or 3 guys, and we'll be happy with that, right? Well, who do you really want? Trick told me that the pick was Brian Thomas Jr. I'm hearing rumblings out of Miami now that Miami was seriously considering taking him. And it's odd when you look back and say, well, they got Waddle, and of course they got Tyreek, and they had a whole bunch of needs. Well, why would they do that? Well, some teams do that. Some teams just say, you know what, this is the part of our team that's the best, and we are going to make it even better. And the one thing about the Dolphins, if you know this, the Dolphins have all their receivers are like 5'11" or shorter. And that's being generous. I think Odell's 5'11". He's just going to play his first game. That they were looking for somebody with more of a catch radius. I don't know where they're going to play him. If they're going to play him in the slot, or they were going to put Jalen Waddle in the slot. But you can do that when you got a guy on his rookie contract, even though you got 2 other expensive wide receivers. It's just amazing to me, man, that they almost missed. And that's the game that you play in the draft. I am very, very happy that it worked out and that Miami took Chop Robinson and Brian Thomas Jr. ended up here in Jacksonville. He is going to help Trevor Lawrence tremendously over the course of Trevor's career. He gives him an absolute go-to player, and they didn't have to force it. Brian earned that. He earned it every single time. And at some point I said, you know what? They need to just go to him. They need to be intentional. The one thing they need to be intentional about is the passing game is finding number 7. And I think as long as you allow Trevor to have that base, that he's going to take that look first. Obviously, he's going to go through his progressions, but he's going to take that look first, and he knows that that dude is over there. And the defense knows that that dude is over there. So that is in turn going to open everything up for a lot of other people, especially with these defenses that have suspect corners and they have to leave safeties and try to bracket a guy. Now you're talking about the running game working. So it's like the reverse of play action, whereas play action freezes people and it allows the receivers to work. Having a dope receiver like that really, really puts the other team on notice pre-snap, pre-game, in preparation that week from a game plan perspective. And usually what happens is the running game opens up because you're worried about that guy. You're worried about that threat. It's one of the reasons I think the Jaguars should be optimistic moving forward, at least about that aspect of this team. It's one game, man. Whether it was Brian Thomas Jr., Brenton Strange, Tank Bigsby, the guys on the offensive line, Trayvon Walker, everybody Ventrell Miller, Trevor Lawrence, well, Trevor kind of. Everybody let me know the other day, these are bulky picks. Yeah, they are. I'll tell you why y'all need to pipe down a little bit. Even though I gave Trent Baalke credit for those guys actually having more than a pulse the other day, actually winning. Tell you why y'all need to pipe down a bit. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked on Jaguars. What time is it, man? It is game time. That's right. Game Time is the sponsor for today's show. You need to get on Game Time and go ahead and download the app right now. Even if you're not buying tickets to any event as we speak, it does not matter. You need to download the app because you're going to need it one day. Trust me. You're going to need it at the last minute, and they focus on last minute deals. You're going to want no fluff. You're going to want to see the tickets you want to see, and they do that with their curation process. Everything is going to be tailored to you, man, and you can have curated deals, and it makes it easier to find the best price on great seats. The super deal, seat views before you buy, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss, all of that stuff. And they'll never tell you that you buying tickets late is your emergency. No, it's theirs. They'll handle it for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code. I'm going to spell this for you. LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Man, you know it's game time. All right, we're back here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day. We talked about Calvin Ridley, that's who, and he ain't doing that much up in Nashville. He's making a whole bunch of money, though. Instead of Calvin Ridley, the Jaguars got Brian Thomas Jr. We broke his importance down in the middle of the show. And now, here is what we're going to do now. We're going to close the show talking about the fact that all of the really, really special plays in the victory the other day, the 37-34 victory, were made by a lot of people that Trent Baalke has put a lot of stock into and picks that he's made in the draft. I will acknowledge that. I'll also acknowledge that they gave away 34 points to a Colts team that were depleted with their best player not even playing, with a backup quarterback, and those guys are Baalke picks too. I said that to say this. You can celebrate the fact that the players that you've been wanting to play well for so long finally stepped up and played well, right? But I'll remind everybody that they thought Tank Bigsby was a waste of a pick. I'll remind everybody that Brenton Strange hadn't done too much of nothing until the Cleveland game when he finally woke up and started playing better. That's a good sign of player development. I'll let everybody know that the offensive line until the last 2 weeks were not playing well going into last year. Trevor Lawrence won his first game in 10 starts. Yeah, I got nothing bad to say about Trayvon. Trayvon has always done a good job, if you ask me. Ventrell Miller played well. And before Iluvakan goes back, you better hope they play him together. But if they do that, that means Devin Lloyd is a first-round pick who will be on the sideline. And Chad Muma was a third-round pick in that same draft who will sit on the sideline. So you have to, there's some give and take. Tank Bigsby plays well, first-round pick. Travis Etienne, y'all forgetting about it. This is how this works. I am rooting for all of those dudes to play well. But you have to beat more than the Colts and maybe the Bears and maybe the Patriots. I know that's 3 straight wins if they are able to do it. Don't forget about those 4 games that they lost, and those were the same guys. We can't, from a week-to-week basis, want to fire a GM and then change our mind because all of a sudden all the players play well. That's not how this works. How this works is, at this point, they should be competing with the likes of the Ravens. They should be competing with the likes of the Chiefs, because they've had 4 years with a bunch of draft picks and high draft picks and a bunch of money that they spent in free agency. They should be competing with the best teams in the league. You don't go up to Buffalo and get behind 34-0 or 34-7, and then 2 weeks later start bragging to me about bulky draft picks because they played a game well. It just doesn't work that way. In order to be good, you have to be sustained. Everything has to be sustained. For the last 9 of the last 10 weeks, the Jaguars coaching staff has stood in front of a podium, game weeks that is, extended into last year, and they say, we just don't know. We got to figure it out. We got to work it out. And if they run into another situation where stuff hits the fan again, then everybody's going to want to jump back on he's a clown. Let's wear clown faces to the game and call him a clown. And as soon as they start playing well, Balky masterclass. I get it. I am not one to jump around like that. I stand firm on exactly the things that I said 2 weeks ago. I think moving forward, the team will be better off with somebody else. It's just not time for us to do that right now once they get a win and have a chance to go on a win streak. You got to make up your mind. You either want to see them successful or you want to be right about something else. And what I want them to do is be successful. And I think the reason why I say the things that I say about Trent Baalke is because I want them to be successful, not because I want to be right about him personally. So yeah, let's just give it a little bit more time and let's slow down a little bit before we start taking all the things that we said back. I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going to do it. We have to let things play out. If I got to take things back that I said about Baalke, the Jaguars scored 37 points the other day. Y'all going to take back things y'all said about Press and Doug calling plays? I wonder like where all this accountability has to come from. And it just seems like everyone's into this gotcha stuff as opposed to letting it play out over time. It is just like Trevor Lawrence will make a real good throw and then make 4 or 5 bad ones sometimes. It is not about your best day. It is about who you are most of the time, consistently, every single week. That is what it's all about. That is what it's always been about with me. And hopefully you'll feel the same way. Now, if you want to hear Locked On NFL, you should want to hear it because we called Aaron Rodgers going to get in Robert Saleh fired, right? You can check it out, man. And it's twice a day, early in the morning with the madman Tyler Rowland, giving you a double shot of NFL espresso with the help of local experts that know your team like no one else. And then slide through with the barbershop. We got some more experts and we lay it down also. And we all up in people's business, letting you know everything that's going on in the National Football League. Twice a day, Locked On NFL, wherever you hear your podcast and listen to them. And on our YouTube page, that is Locked On NFL. All right, man, you guys take care of each other. We'll have a crossover tomorrow and then a game preview of the Chicago Bears. Lauren Cox, that's right. From Locked On Bears, we'll have the crossover. No, that's not tomorrow. That's Thursday. I got my days crossed up. I'm worried about this storm coming, so we're probably going to end up doing a couple of podcasts at one time and try to spread them out just in case power goes off so you guys can listen on your phone. Buckle down, man. Good luck through the storm. Best wishes to the people in the Tampa area in Central Florida. We're certainly hoping that the best happens with them, their loved ones, all of their property, and they'll be able to recover as soon as this storm is over. You guys make sure you tap in every single day and take care of each other. We'll do the same. Thank you for joining me here on Locked On Jaguars.